Tanjiro remembers Kyojuro Rengoku's fierce battle with Akaza and his parting words. Tears well up in his eyes, and soon he breaks down, mourning the fallen Hashira. Zenitsu and Inosuke are not far behind. Zenitsu sobs quietly, while Inosuke fights back his tears, shouting that they will continue their training. As the Kakushi arrive to offer assistance, Rengoku's crow delivers the sad news to his family. Upon hearing of his brother's death, Sanjuro collapses to the floor in anguish. Meanwhile, another Kasugai crow informs the Demon Slayer Corps, where Kagaya Ubuyashiki learns about Tanjiro's intense encounter with Upper Rank 3. Elsewhere, a family praises their adopted son, Toshikuni, for his intelligence and kindness. As Toshikuni reads a botany book from the library, the room's curtains suddenly rustle, revealing Akaza. He appears before Toshikuni, who is, in reality, Muzan Kibutsuji in disguise. Muzan's eyes turn from human blue to demonic plum red as he listens to Akaza's report. Akaza failed to find the blue spider lily, but managed to kill a Hashira. Infuriated, Muzan seizes Akaza's cells, causing his body to decay and bleed. Despite the agony, Akaza stands firm as Muzan reprimands him, dismissing the Hashira's death as unworthy of praise. To Muzan, killing humans is expected, and Akaza's failure to eliminate all the Demon Slayers present angers him further. Muzan reminds Akaza of his past mistake, getting injured by a non-Hashira swordsman, and sends him away, filled with disappointment. Alone in a forest, Akaza hurls Tanjiro's Nichiren sword into a tree. The memory of Tanjiro calling him a coward haunts him, and in a fit of rage, Akaza shatters the sword. He vows that the next time they meet, he will kill Tanjiro, now certain he can recognize his face. At the Butterfly Mansion, Zenitsu reflects on how Kyojuro's death has shaken everyone, even Tanjiro, who had always been hopeful. Inosuke, too, has been reduced to tears despite his tough exterior. As Zenitsu steals some bean buns from Aoi, intending to comfort Tanjiro, he bumps into Kyo, who is distraught. She fears for Tanjiro's well-being, knowing he hasn't fully recovered, but continues to train relentlessly. Worried, she tells Zenitsu that Tanjiro is now nowhere to be found. Tanjiro, following Kyojuro's Kasugai crow, arrives at the Rengoku residence, where he meets Sanjuro. The boy's face is filled with sorrow after hearing of his brother's passing. Tanjiro tries to deliver Kyojuro's final message, but Shinjuro Rengoku, Kyojuro's father, is drunkenly dismissive. He angrily rants that Kyojuro's lack of talent is what led to his death, calling him a fool. Shinjuro orders Sanjuro to stop crying, but the boy struggles to hold back his tears. Shocked by Shinjuro's cruelty, Tanjiro demands that he stop insulting his deceased son. Shinjuro notices Tanjiro's earrings and accuses him of being a sun-breathing user. Without understanding the significance, Tanjiro is suddenly attacked by the former Flame Hashira, who knocks Shinjuro aside when he tries to intervene. As the scuffle intensifies, Shinjuro declares that Tanjiro has come to mock them, enraged by his connection to sun-breathing. Shinjuro explains that sun-breathing is the original and strongest form of all breathing techniques, from which the other styles are derived. He warns Tanjiro not to become arrogant just because he uses it. Tanjiro, overwhelmed with emotion, asks if Shinjuro cannot see his own weakness, consumed by grief over his inability to save Kyojuro. Charging at Shinjuro, Tanjiro is violently punched, but manages to stop him with a powerful headbutt. Later, Tanjiro apologizes to Sanjuro for his actions, but Sanjuro reassures him, saying that his father has already gone to buy more sake. Sanjuro expresses gratitude to Tanjiro for standing up for Kyojuro, something he feels incapable of doing. He gives Tanjiro the Flame Hashira records, but they are both shocked to find the pages torn. Sanjuro believes his father is responsible, but Tanjiro dismisses the need for an apology, instead resolving to train harder and master Hinokami Kagura. Tanjiro promises Sanjuro that he will become a Hashira like Kyojuro, which brings Sanjuro to tears. The boy laments that he has no Tsuguko, nor is he strong enough to continue the line of Flame Hashira, feeling as though he has failed his brother. Before Tanjiro leaves, Sanjuro offers him Kyojuro's Tsuba as a keepsake. Tanjiro initially refuses, but Sanjuro insists. Later, Sanjuro attempts to speak to his father about Kyojuro's final message. Shinjuro dismisses it as worthless, assuming it's a slight against him. With a heavy heart, Sanjuro relays Kyojuro's message. Please take care of yourself. Shinjuro, now alone, quietly sets his drink aside and begins to grieve. As Tanjiro heads home, he unexpectedly encounters his swordsmith, Nezuko, armed with knives and furious that Tanjiro has once again lost his sword. The swordsmith chases Tanjiro throughout the day until Aoi steps in to calm him down. Over the next 4 months, Tanjiro, Inosuke, and Zenitsu train diligently to prepare for future battles against demons. Tanjiro, alongside Nezuko, defeats a mantis demon, showcasing Nezuko's growing recognition within the Demon Slayer Corps. After a fierce fight, Tanjiro corners the demon in a shed and finishes it using water breathing, fourth form, striking tide. Upon returning from the mission, Tanjiro is met with chaos at the Butterfly Mansion. The sound Hashira, Tengen Uzui, has arrived and is forcefully kidnapping Aoi and Naho. Kyo and Sumi cry out for their release, while Kanao, overwhelmed by the situation, attempts to rationalize her response by flipping a coin. However, recalling Tanjiro's words to follow her heart, she stops Tengen and tries to free Aoi and Naho. With Kyo and Sumi joining in, they manage to momentarily hinder the powerful Hashira. Tanjiro soon arrives, confronting Tengen and attempting to headbutt him. Tengen evades effortlessly, leaping onto a nearby arch. He declares that as a former shinobi, he doesn't need Shinobu's permission to take them on a mission. Realizing Naho isn't a demon slayer, Tengen releases her, forcing Tanjiro to catch her before she falls. Furious at Tengen's actions, Tanjiro refuses to acknowledge him as a Hashira, much to Tengen's annoyance. Zenitsu and Inosuke arrive to join Tanjiro, and together they declare they will accompany him on his mission. Satisfied with their resolve, Tengen warns them not to defy him again before slapping Aoi's back as he leaves. The trio follow behind Tengen. Zenitsu marvels at Tengen's imposing figure, while Inosuke impatiently asks where they are headed. Tengen replies with a grin, "To Japan's most glamorous and hedonistic place, the entertainment district, where demons lurk." Tanjiro and Inosuke, unfamiliar with the concept of a red light district, leave Zenitsu exasperated by their innocence. Tengen Uzui, the sound Hashira, boldly introduces himself as a god and immediately refers to the trio as trash, instructing them to burn this notion into their minds. Zenitsu struggles to accept Tengen's words, while Tanjiro, with genuine curiosity, asks what kind of god Tengen claims to be, leaving Zenitsu even more flustered. Tengen confidently declares himself the god of flashiness and the god of festivals. Inosuke, not one to be outdone, declares himself the king of the mountain, a statement that both confounds Tengen and further agitates Zenitsu. Tengen, taking charge, races ahead with impressive speed, leaving the trio in awe. Soon after, they reach their destination, where Tanjiro gazes in wonder at the unfamiliar surroundings. Tengen instructs them to stay close, but the three immediately scatter to explore, frustrating him. He hurriedly explains that they are in the Yoshiwara Red Light District, known for coming alive at night, making it the perfect hiding place for demons. Inosuke is thrilled by the bustling crowds, while Zenitsu becomes distracted by the women beckoning him, forcing Tengen to chase after the two and keep them in line. Once inside a house, Tengen orders the trio to search for his wife, while he gathers information about the suspected demon. Zenitsu, jumping to conclusions, angrily assumes they are being sent to find a bride, but Tengen quickly corrects him, explaining that his wife has been undercover gathering intel. When shown the letters from his wife, Tanjiro initially believes she has been working undercover for an extended period. However, Tengen casually reveals that he has 3 wives, which infuriates Zenitsu even more, leading Tengen to knock him out of his tantrum. Tanjiro, reading the letters, asks what it means to not stand out. Tengen then explains that their task is to go undercover. He reveals that his first attempt to investigate as a customer failed, so he sent his 3 wives to 3 different houses: Suma at the Tokito house, Makio at the Ojimoto house, and Hinatsuru at the Kyogoku house. Inosuke, always impulsive, blurts out that the wives might be dead, which earns him a swift punch from Tengen. Just then, an attendant arrives with a box of disguises for their mission. Dressed in crude makeup, Tengen presents the trio to the Tokito house, hoping one of them will be accepted. Despite their peculiar appearance, the madam agrees to take one, charmed by Tengen's striking good looks. Tanjiro, now under the alias Sumiko, is selected. Tengen scolds Zenitsu and Inosuke for their hopelessness in blending in, with Zenitsu fuming. Not because of the disguise, but because of Tengen's unfairly handsome looks. As the trio watches the Oiran Koinatsu and her courtesans parade through the district, Zenitsu asks if she is one of Tengen's wives. Tengen's answer is another quick punch. Soon after, a woman from the Ogimoto house approaches and asks to take Inosuke, whom Tengen obliges, leaving Zenitsu as the last one to be placed. At the Ogimoto house, Inosuke's makeup is removed, and the attendants are shocked by his natural beauty hidden beneath the disguise, especially contrasted by his muscular build. Meanwhile, Zenitsu, at the Kyogoku house, stuns everyone with his exceptional shamisen performance, aided by his heightened sense of hearing. The house's attendants are amazed by his talent, but find his appearance far less impressive, though they continue to swoon over Tengen, who had brought Zenitsu, now named Zenko, to the house. Despite the mocking comments, the madam believes Zenko will rise in the ranks due to the passion driving her performance. Tanjiro, hard at work in the Tokido house, overhears gossip about the mysterious death of the Kyogoku house's madam and the disappearance of a former Oiran named Suma, one of Tengen's wives. When Tanjiro asks if Suma really ran away, Koinatsu becomes alarmed, though she reassures Tanjiro that Suma never appeared to be the type to fall in love and disappear. Meanwhile, Tengen, patrolling the rooftops, scans the district for any signs of danger. Despite the calm, he remains on edge, sensing the presence of an upper-rank demon. At the same time, Inosuke, uncomfortable in his restrictive kimono, overhears attendants discussing Makio, Tengen's second wife, who has locked herself in her room, claiming to be ill. Suspicious, Inosuke decides to investigate, all the while avoiding speaking to prevent revealing his identity. Unbeknownst to him, behind one of the doors, Makio is bound and tortured by a demon who addresses her by name and demands answers about the letters she's been writing. During the Edo period, in the brothel district of Yoshiwara, an attendant confronts an Oiran as she applies her makeup, accusing her of being responsible for the recent disappearances within the establishment. The attendant steps into the room, closing the door behind them. Moments later, the Oiran emerges alone, with no trace left of the attendant. Meanwhile, at the Ogimoto house, a captive Makio is being interrogated about the recipient of her letters, with the demon addressing her by name. Inosuke, sensing a disturbance, begins to investigate. Over at the Kyogoku house, Zenitsu reflects on his time there, noting that since his arrival, he hasn't heard any news about Hinetsuru, despite staying vigilant. The recent death of the house's owner only complicates matters, as fear and silence grip everyone around him. Determined, Zenitsu sharpens his hearing, picking up on the many voices within the house. Among them, he hears the faint sound of a young girl crying. Back at the Ogimoto house, the demon becomes aware of an approaching presence, irritated by the increasing activity around the house. As Makio tries to figure out how to notify Tengen, the demon's sashes constrict around her, threatening to crush her organs if she causes a disturbance. Inosuke stands before Makio's quiet room, feeling an eerie sensation as he takes in the uneaten food left for her. Deciding that sitting idly isn't his style, he storms into the room. What he finds stuns him. The room is in complete disarray, with papers shredded, pillows torn, and slashes covering the walls. To his amazement, debris floats in the air despite the windows being shut tight. In a burst of frustration, he throws a bowl of ramen at the ceiling, yelling out that he knows a demon is nearby. The ceiling shakes in response, and the demon flees, with Inosuke chasing after it through the hallways. In his pursuit, he crashes through walls, even punching an unfortunate guest who gets in his way, leaving a gaping hole behind him. Using his beast-breathing, seventh form, spatial awareness, he senses the demon fleeing toward the lower levels of the house. However, the swirling kimonos in the air dull his senses, and he loses track of the demon, angrily blaming the commotion around him for its escape. Back in the Kyogoku house, Zenitsu enters a room and hears a young girl sobbing. Shocked by the wrecked state of the room, he demands to know if she's been involved in a fight. Startled, the girl begins to cry even harder, causing Zenitsu to soften his tone and ask gently if she's in trouble. As he reassures her that he isn't angry, a sinister presence appears behind him. A voice, cold and threatening, demands to know what he's doing in the room. Turning in terror, Zenitsu realizes that the demon, Kyogoku House's Oiran, Warabihime, has revealed herself. Two other girls nervously inform her that Zenko only arrived recently. Warabihime dismisses them, her presence intimidating everyone in the room. Zenitsu apologizes for intruding, but Warabihime mocks him, ridiculing his ugly appearance and his yellow hair. She approaches the young girl who had been cleaning and, without warning, cruelly twists her ear, ignoring the girl's screams of pain. The girl pleads for forgiveness as blood drips from her ear. In an instant, Zenitsu grabs Warabihime's arm, demanding that she stop. Meanwhile, at the Tokido house, Tanjiro continues to perform his chores with remarkable speed and diligence, leaving the house madam astonished as she runs out of tasks for him to do. Back at the Ojimoto house, the chaperone and 2 attendants stumble upon the large hole left by Inosuke. Preparing to confront Inoko about the destruction, they are taken aback to find him contorted in a bizarre stance, with his legs over his head, intensely focused on sensing the demon. Suddenly, Warabihime captures Zenitsu in her sashes and lifts him into the air, mocking him for not minding his business. Revealing her true form as Daki, upper rank 6 of the 12 Kizuki, she taunts him before mercilessly throwing Omitsu to her death below. Her eyes gleam with her demonic power as she boasts about her preference for beautiful and strong victims, uninterested in those she deems ugly or weak. As she returns to her room, Daki finds Muzan Kibutsuji waiting for her. Kneeling before him, she addresses him as Master Muzan, receiving praise for her strength and her growing hunger. Muzan advises her to remain cautious, reminding her that skilled demon slayers can easily distinguish demons from humans. Complimenting her beauty and power, he remarks on her having killed 7 Hashira, acknowledging her as an exceptional demon. Meanwhile, Zenitsu is flung through multiple walls, unconscious. Daki seethes, irritated that he dared to touch her, though she notes that he reacted swiftly, leading her to deduce that he must be a demon slayer, albeit not a Hashira. As she resumes applying her makeup, she mutters to herself, pleased that Zenitsu was brought into the house, and vows to devour them all. Elsewhere, Tanjiro continues with his chores, when a sudden ominous scent fills the air, one that only appears at night. Zenitsu awakens to the sight of the 3 young girls from earlier, relieved that Zenko is conscious again. They offer him food and a towel for his injuries, expressing their gratitude for his earlier bravery. Zenitsu, hiding his pain, reassures them, telling them that it's a man's duty to protect those in need. However, Daki strikes again, abducting him without warning. In the Tokido house, Koinatsu's young attendants eagerly ask her to read them a book. Before she obliges, she graciously offers them 2 precious Hirauchi Kenzashi hairpins, originally meant for her, expressing her desire for them to have the treasured gifts. Meanwhile, in the Kyogoku house, a chaperone informs the owner that Zenko is missing, but the owner refuses to authorize a search. Fearful of upsetting Warabihime, he angrily dismisses the request. Atop the district rooftops, Tanjiro and Inosuke discuss their next steps. Inosuke mentions a demon in his residence, though his strange description only confuses Tanjiro. Just then, Tengen joins them, informing them that Zenitsu will not be coming. When Tanjiro presses for clarification, Tengen cryptically admits that his desperation to rescue his wives has caused Zenitsu's disappearance. He expresses regret for involving the younger demon slayers, believing they are not strong enough to face an upper-rank demon. Despite Tanjiro's attempt to reassure him, Tengen insists there is no shame in leaving and vanishes before either of them can respond. Tanjiro begins to wonder if Tengen's doubts stem from their low rank, but Inosuke corrects him, pointing out that they've been promoted. They are now Kanu, 3 ranks above Mizunoto. Inosuke proudly shows his rank by flexing his arm, revealing a mark that signifies their status as demon slayers. Inspired, Tanjiro suggests they start investigating the Ojimoto house together, but Inosuke resists, leading to a brief argument. Tanjiro explains that the demon is still missing from his house, and he suspects Zenitsu's disappearance is related. He theorizes that a hidden passage connects the houses, allowing the demon to move freely between them. Tanjiro also believes the demon is disguising itself as a human to avoid suspicion, and Inosuke agrees, noting how difficult it would be to cover up murders in such a bustling area. Convinced that Zenitsu and Tengen's wives are still alive, the 2 finalize their plan, with Tanjiro urging Inosuke to stay safe. Inosuke reluctantly agrees. Later, in the Tokido house, Koinatsu enjoys her tea as her attendants leave for dinner. Alone, she is surprised when Tanjiro appears in his Demon Slayer uniform, now armed with his Nichiren sword. He offers payment for the time he spent in her house. Noticing her surprise at his attire, Tanjiro explains that he was in disguise. Koinatsu, to his astonishment, reveals that she had known all along that he wasn't a girl. Tanjiro then reassures her that he will rescue everyone who has gone missing. Relieved, Koinatsu tells him that she is leaving the district soon to be married. She expresses her concern for the missing, telling Tanjiro to stay safe and avoid disappearing like the others. Tanjiro bids her farewell, wishing her happiness, and she thanks Sumi for his kind words. As she prepares to leave, Koinatsu suddenly senses something and asks if Tanjiro has returned. Instead, Daki appears, ominously stating that she won't forget to devour Koinatsu before she leaves the district. Meanwhile, as Tanjiro races toward the Ogimoto house, he pauses, catching the scent of a demon nearby. Inside the Ogimoto house, Inosuke grows frustrated with Tanjiro's absence and decides to take matters into his own hands. He leaps into the ceiling, demanding his swords. From the shadows, two small mice appear, carrying his blades toward him. Impressed, Inosuke praises Tengen for training the mice as his personal assistants. Now rearmed, he bursts out of his room, startling a nearby chaperone with his sudden action. Back at the Kyogoku house, the owner stares at his wife's bloodied kimono when he hears a voice inquiring about Zenko and Hinatsuru's whereabouts. Tengen emerges, threatening the man with a kunai to his throat. Trembling, the owner confesses that Zenko has disappeared, and Hinatsuru was taken to the Kirimisa, the district's poorer area, after falling ill. Satisfied, Tengen assures him that he can be trusted and demands any other information. The owner hesitantly reveals that Warabihime, the Oiran, resides in a room on the north side, which is kept in complete darkness. With this new lead, Tengen vanishes, leaving the owner stunned. Arriving at the empty room, Tengen concludes that the demon is on the hunt. He dashes across the rooftops, heading toward where Hinatsuru might be, hoping she's still alive and can provide information. He believes the demon will return to the room by daybreak, vowing to kill it. At the now dark Tokido house, Tanjiro opens a window to warn Koinatsu, only to come face to face with Daki. She asks if he is a demon slayer and questions how many of them are in the district, already knowing about Zenitsu. Without waiting for a response, she wonders if a Hashira is among them, quickly dismissing Tanjiro as too weak to be one. Her gaze shifts to Koinatsu, now absorbed into her obi. Tanjiro, realizing the gravity of the situation, demands that she release Koinatsu. His defiance angers Daki, and she hurls him into a nearby building with her obi sash. Though dazed by the blow, Tanjiro forces himself to stand and prepares for the battle ahead. He deduces that her obi, with its ability to absorb people, is the key to her power, and the reason he couldn't find a passage large enough for a human. She only needs a small crack to capture her victims. Daki, noticing his resilience, compliments his eyes, threatening to gouge them out later. As Nezuko's box slips from his back, Tanjiro instructs her to stay inside unless her life is in danger. With renewed determination, Tanjiro draws his sword and attacks using water breathing, fourth form, striking tide, turbulent. Daki counters with her sashes, which initially proved too tough for his blade. After several attempts, he finally slices through one, but Daki retaliates, sending him crashing to the ground. As she lands, she commends his mid-air combat skills and notes that he successfully separated the sash-holding Koinatsu. Tanjiro, catching his breath, wonders if he can fight an upper-rank demon without help, but soon resolves that it doesn't matter. He has no choice but to face Daki alone. Leaping across the rooftops, Tengen arrives at the Kirimise district of Yoshiwara. His sharp eyes quickly spot his unconscious wife, Hinatsuru, still ensnared by the demon's sashes. Without hesitation, he cuts her free and administers an antidote, trying to revive her. As she regains consciousness, she weakly apologizes, explaining that she had suspected Warabihime of being a demon. But before she could act, her suspicions deepened, and she drank poison to escape from the Kyogoku house. However, the sash gifted by Warabihime had prevented her from reaching Tengen. Despite her weakened state, Hinatsuru urges him to leave her and join the battle against the demon, the distant sounds of combat echoing through the air. Concerned, Tengen asks if she will be all right, but she silently nods, apologizing for her perceived uselessness. Tengen quiets her gently and commands her to flee Yoshiwara once the antidote takes effect. Hinatsuru, knowing she has no choice, agrees. Tengen swiftly scans the area from the rooftops, his senses alert for any sign of the demon. Hearing a faint noise, he immediately triangulates its source, descending closer to the ground. The sounds of an underground battle reach his ears, and without wasting time, he draws his twin blades. Summoning his sound-breathing technique, he unleashes the first form. Roar, causing a thunderous explosion. The shockwave reverberates through the district, drawing the attention of Daki. Irritated by yet another interference, she demands to know how many enemies are present, but Tanjiro, standing before her, remains silent. Frustrated, Daki offers Tanjiro a deal, promising to spare his life if he answers. She mocks his damaged Nichiren sword, claiming it is already weakened from their brief encounter. Hearing her insult the swordsmith, Nezuko, Tanjiro defiantly praises his skill, rejecting her taunts. Another explosion rocks the area, further aggravating Daki. Her patience running thin, she declares her intent to kill Tanjiro, blaming his poor swordsmanship for the damage. Tanjiro, realizing his limitations with water breathing, acknowledges that he is stronger using the Hinokami Kagura technique. Memories of his training at the Butterfly Mansion flash in his mind. As Inosuke spars aggressively with Zenitsu, Tanjiro recalls attempting to master Hinokami Kagura. While he succeeds in performing flame dance, his body struggles with the sheer intensity of clear blue sky, causing him to collapse in pain. His friends rush to his side, but Tanjiro silently reflects on the overwhelming force of the technique and his inability to sustain it. Now, standing before Daki, Tanjiro steels himself. He recalls Kyojuro's words, "Set your heart ablaze." With renewed determination, he charges forward, his blade flashing as he executes Hinokami Kagura. Raging Sun! Daki is caught off guard by the sudden surge in his abilities. Tanjiro presses on, narrowly missing her neck with flame dance. In retaliation, Daki sends her obi flying towards his throat, but Tanjiro vanishes, using Hinokami Kagura. Fake rainbow to evade the attack. Spotting an opening, he readies Hinokami Kagura, fire wheel, aiming for her neck. Yet Daki counters swiftly, swatting him away with her obi. Fatigue overtakes Tanjiro as his body struggles to cope with the continuous use of Hinokami Kagura. He collapses, his energy drained. Seeing her chance, Daki rushes at him, her obi poised to tear him apart. At the last moment, Tanjiro taps into recovery breathing, gathering enough strength to parry her attack and escape. She launches a barrage of strikes, and though he blocks them, the relentless assault leaves him unable to strike back effectively. Desperate, he resolves to raise his body temperature, relying on Hinokami Kagura once more. A memory of Kyo surfaces. Worried about his rising temperature, Kyo had urged Tanjiro to consult Shinobu. Despite her concern, Tanjiro reassured her that his fever allowed him to fight at his peak, asking her not to tell Shinobu. Reluctantly, Kyo had agreed. Now, as his body temperature rises, Tanjiro feels his strength returning. In the Ojimito house, a girl's scream echoes as Inosuke bursts through the floor, startling everyone. Spotting a narrow tunnel beneath the floorboards, Inosuke dislocates his joints and slithers down. He finds himself in a chamber filled with bones and bound by obi sashes. Realizing the people within are still alive, he spots Zenitsu among them. Suddenly, a sentient obi attacks him, forcing him to defend himself. As he slashes at it, he inadvertently frees the trapped victims. The obi, startled by Inosuke's sharp instincts, hesitates. Hearing Daki's voice, it receives orders to capture Inosuke and kill all but the 10 most beautiful people. The obi strikes again, but Inosuke counters with beast breathing, 6th form, palisade bite, though he struggles to cut it. Out of nowhere, knives fly through the air, stopping the obi's attack. Makio and Suma appear, slicing through the sashes, though Suma's fear holds them back. Despite their small victory, Inosuke realizes the demon's main body is elsewhere. Suddenly, Zenitsu unleashes thunder breathing, 1st form, thunderclap and flash, 6-fold, tearing through the chamber with blinding speed. Just as the battle intensifies, a powerful explosion erupts from above, and Tengen descends, cutting through the remaining sashes in one swift motion. Apologizing for his delay, he expresses relief at seeing his wives unharmed. Makio recalls how, in the past, Tengen had instructed them to prioritize their own lives, a sentiment that surprised her as a kunoichi. Though their training had taught them to expect death, Tengen had emphasized their importance over any mission. Approaching his wives, Tengen affectionately pats their heads, praising their efforts. Makio, overwhelmed by emotion, tears up, while Suma bursts into loud sobs, realizing how deeply Tengen cares for them. With a flamboyant twirl of his blades, Tengen declares that the real battle is just beginning, and facing Daki alone, Tanjiro relies on the Hinokami Kagura technique, Raging Sun, to slice through the incoming attacks of her obis. He surges toward her, evading her assault with fake rainbow before attempting to cut her neck using Fire Wheel. However, Daki anticipates the attack and strikes back, sending him crashing into the ground. Exhausted from repeatedly using the Hinokami Kagura, Tanjiro narrowly avoids further injury by relying on recovery breathing. Daki's relentless barrage of attacks forces him into a defensive stance as he struggles to regain control. With Tanjiro faltering, Daki draws closer, mocking him by calling him an ugly piece of trash. She lashes out with her obi, wreaking havoc across the district and forcing Tanjiro to defend against her swift attacks. Suddenly, Daki leaps into the air, and two additional obi sashes attach themselves to her. To Tanjiro's surprise, the slashed obis that had been severed by Tengen's sound, breathing begin to escape the cave and reattach to her, revitalizing her strength. As Tanjiro watches in disbelief, he wonders if those are the same obis he cut earlier. While trying to control his breathing, he swings his blade, but Daki vanishes before his eyes, reappearing on a nearby rooftop. With her hair turning white, she proclaims that a Hashira has indeed arrived and boasts that Muzan will be proud of her. Tanjiro is stunned by her transformation, realizing she's become even stronger. His mind also drifts to Tengen and his companions, concerned about their safety. At that moment, a civilian angrily confronts Tanjiro for causing a disturbance in the district. As more bystanders gather, the man orders them to leave, accusing him of breaking the district's rules. Daki, irritated by the man's demands, readies an attack. Sensing danger, Tanjiro pushes the man away, urging everyone to seek shelter immediately. But before he can react, Daki's obi tears through the district, demolishing buildings and cutting down innocent civilians. Tanjiro, wounded in the shoulder, can only watch in horror as the devastation unfolds, with the man losing his hand to the attack. Satisfied with the destruction, Daki turns to leave, but Tanjiro, seething with rage, calls after her. Frustrated, she asks why he insists on continuing, remarking that the ugly have no right to live and should die like the others. Meanwhile, survivors gather around the wreckage, mourning their loved ones as they try to comprehend the tragedy. Tanjiro's bloodshot eyes burn with fury, her words cutting deeper than any wound. In a flashback, Shinjuro Rengoku writes to Tanjiro, apologizing for his past behavior and expressing gratitude for mourning his son Kyojuro's death. He reflects on his own failures, blaming his downward spiral on the loss of his wife and the burden of Kyojuro's death. Shinjuro admits that while he himself is incompetent, Kyojuro was a fine son who taught himself the art of flame breathing. He also acknowledges that Tanjiro, with the mark on his head, is likely a sun-breathing user, a lineage of which he is unaware. Tanjiro dismisses the notion that his scar is special, recalling how it came from protecting his brother during an accident. Despite the overwhelming odds, he realizes that he cannot back down when facing those who have no regard for human life. He readies himself for the fight, determined not to let Daki's tyranny go unpunished. As Daki tries to flee, Tanjiro leaps into the air and grabs her by the leg, ripping off her foot when she evades his attack. Enraged, he demands an explanation for the senseless slaughter of humans. His words trigger a distant memory in Daki, one that doesn't belong to her, but to Muzan. She remembers hearing similar accusations before, and the memory unsettles her. Meanwhile, in the cave, Tengen strategizes their next move as Makio and Suma tend to the unconscious victims. Inosuke, growing impatient, presses Tengen for action, but the Hashira angrily demands silence, reminding him that they've already saved everyone. Encouraged by Makio and Suma, Tengen decides to pursue the escaping obi, taking Inosuke and Zenitsu with him as they race across the rooftops. Back in the battle, Daki coldly states that she has long forgotten her human memories, claiming that demons live without fear of age or sickness. With nothing to lose, they can act however they wish. Tanjiro accepts her words, but doesn't hesitate as he charges forward. Daki, readying her blood demon art, 8-layered obi slash, believes she has cornered him, but Tanjiro counters with Hinokami Kagura. Burning bones, summer sun. The fiery technique slices through her obi, leaving her in pain as she struggles to regenerate. Despite her newfound strength, Daki begins to tremble, sensing fear not from herself, but from Muzan within her. Panicked, she tries to overwhelm Tanjiro once more, but he slices through her attacks with ease. As she tries to escape, Tanjiro catches up, aiming. However, his blade only grazes her, as her neck is protected by a sash. Just as Daki readies more obi to trap him, Tanjiro realizes they seem slower than before. He pins them down, forcing them taut, before ripping through them and launching himself toward her. As his sword nears her neck, a vision of his sister Hanako appears, urging him to breathe. The vision breaks his focus, and he collapses, gasping for air. Daki mocks him for his humanity, prepared to deliver the final blow. But before she can strike, her head is viciously kicked off, her body flung across the district. Nezuko appears, filled with rage at the sight of her injured brother. Tanjiro, weakened and bleeding, watches helplessly as memories of their slain family flood Nezuko's mind. Recognizing her as the demon Muzan warned her about, Daki recalls the instructions she received to find and kill Nezuko. Nezuko rushes at Daki, but Daki counters by slicing off Nezuko's foot and arm. However, Nezuko regenerates instantly, stunning Daki with her newfound power. As Nezuko's body transforms further, a horn emerges from her head, and vine-like patterns spread across her skin. With her regeneration surpassing that of an upper rank, Nezuko readies herself for battle, her presence shifting the entire atmosphere of the fight. Nezuko charges at Daki with relentless speed, but Daki instinctively strikes back, severing Nezuko's leg and arm. To her shock, Nezuko's injuries heal instantly, and she retaliates by slamming her foot into Daki's back. Reeling from the blow, Daki is overwhelmed by confusion, realizing that Nezuko's regeneration now surpasses her own. Before she can react, Nezuko stomps off Daki's left arm, her smile growing more sinister as she listens to the demon's screams of pain. Meanwhile, Tanjiro lies unconscious, his body still from the intense fight. In his mind, he sees a vision of his younger brother, Takeo, tearfully pleading with him to wake up, warning that their sister is no longer the same. Jolted awake, Tanjiro quickly regains consciousness. Nezuko, showing no mercy, tears off Daki's other arm and presses her assault. Desperate, Daki attempts to hold her back with her obi, slicing and even decapitating Nezuko. However, Nezuko's determination prevails as she halts the attack, using her congealed blood to keep her form intact. Suddenly, her splattered blood ignites, setting Daki on fire. As the flames consume her, memories from her traumatic past resurface, and Daki screams in agony. Nezuko, relishing in the torment, watches Daki burn as she reassembles herself. With a burst of energy, Nezuko leaps into the air, her blood demon art completed, and drives her leg down onto the charred, terrified demon. She repeatedly slams Daki into the ground before kicking her down the street. Nezuko, now faster than before, chases the helpless demon, her kicks sending Daki crashing through several houses. As Nezuko approaches her fallen foe, a sudden scent stops her. A bystander is injured nearby. Overcome by her bloodlust, Nezuko loses control and heads toward the wounded girl, her teeth chattering with the urge to kill. Just as she's about to strike, Tanjiro intervenes, using his scabbard to stop her. Struggling against his sister's ferocity, Tanjiro pleads with Nezuko to resist the urge, apologizing for bringing her into battle. He notices the blood scattered around and realizes just how wounded Nezuko is. Desperately, he begs her to rest and heal. Nezuko, still fighting her instincts, leaps to the upper floor of a house with Tanjiro clinging to her back. Despite his own pain, Tanjiro continues to plead, urging her to sleep. Meanwhile, Daki, still burning from Nezuko's flames, returns to the battlefield, her healing slowed. With innocent lives in danger, Tanjiro is forced to make a choice. Control his rampaging sister or face the upper-rank demon. Before Daki can strike, Tengen, the sound Hashira, arrives. Calmly slicing through Daki's obi, He assesses the situation and asks if Nezuko is now a flashy demon. Tanjiro pleads for his help, but Tengen, frustrated by Nezuko's transformation, can only growl in response. Daki taunts Tengen, but before she can finish, her head falls to the ground, severed by the sound Hashira in a flash. As Inosuke and Zenitsu, standing on nearby rooftops, race to catch up, Zenitsu detects an explosion in the distance, and they both rush toward the scene. Tengen, however, warns Tanjiro that the fight isn't over and tells him to control Nezuko. As a last-ditch effort, Tanjiro sings their mother's lullaby, hoping it will soothe her. In her mind, Nezuko no longer sees Tanjiro, but her mother, Ki, holding her gently and singing the familiar song. A wave of memories washes over her, walking with her family in the mountains, asking innocent questions about her brother's red eyes and her mother's loving smile. Moved to tears, Nezuko begins to regain control, shrinking in size and finally falling asleep. Exhausted, Tanjiro whispers a thank you to their mother as Tengen prepares for the next wave of battle. Daki, still holding her severed head, calls out to Tengen, vowing vengeance. But Tengen dismisses her, uninterested, and tells her to die an unflashy death. Daki, enraged, insists that she's a true upper-rank demon, but Tengen mocks her, wondering why she's still holding her head. Insulted, Daki breaks down into tears, wailing about her status as upper 6. Tengen, bewildered by her tantrum, suddenly realizes something is wrong. Daki isn't disintegrating despite her beheading. As she cries out for her brother, a dark figure begins to emerge from the stump of her neck. Sensing danger, Tengen attempts to decapitate the new threat, but the demons vanish before he can strike. When the dust settles, Tengen turns to find not one, but 2 demons standing before him. Daki's brother, Gyutaro, has arrived, soothing her and healing her burns instantly. Tengen moves to attack, but Gyutaro swiftly counters, injuring the Hashira. As the two face off, Gyutaro compliments Tengen's appearance, envying his looks and success with women. Clawing himself in frustration, Gyutaro vows to make Tengen suffer a gruesome death. With Daki pleading for her brother to kill Nezuko and the demon slayers who bullied her, Gyutaro promises revenge. He hurls his blood-infused kamas toward Tengen, causing a massive explosion that obliterates the house. Tanjiro watches in horror, smelling the Hashira's blood. Just then, Inosuke and Zenitsu appear, ready to assist. Tanjiro entrusts Nezuko to them, urging them to help Tengen. Inside the destroyed house, Tengen fights fiercely, determined to protect the bystanders. As the battle rages, Gyutaro and Daki reveal their greatest weapon. They are 2 demons in one, a deadly combination that will test the demon slayers to their limit. Tanjiro runs through the night, holding Nezuko, who remains asleep in his arms. He carefully places her back into her box, whispering for her to rest peacefully. As he ties the torn strap of the box into a secure knot, he vows to fight until the end. With renewed determination, he hoists the box onto his back and heads out, ready to continue the battle. Meanwhile, Gyutaro taunts Tengen, sarcastically praising his good looks, his 3 wives, and his confident demeanor. He remarks that none of the Hashira he's killed are like Tengen, claiming that he himself was born special. Gyutaro curses Tengen for being a naturally gifted fighter, mocking him to hurry up and kill him. Tengen dismisses the demon's words, asserting that he is not special. He mocks Gyutaro and Daki for their ignorance, having spent their entire lives in Yoshiwara, oblivious to the larger world beyond. Tengen goes on to explain that Japan is filled with extraordinary people, far beyond what Gyutaro can imagine. He mentions individuals like Yomei, a man who is a complete mystery, and Muichiro, who became a Hashira just 2 months after first wielding a sword. With frustration in his voice, Tengen insists that he is not one of the chosen, unlike them, and questions how many lives have slipped through his fingers, knowing he could never be as honorable as Kyojuro. Gyutaro, unimpressed, questions why Tengen isn't dead yet, given his kamas are laced with poison. Tengen, unfazed, reveals that, as a shinobi, he's built up a resistance to poison. Daki interjects, claiming the shinobi were wiped out during the Edo era, to which Tengen agrees. Tengen then reflects on his past. He recalls growing up with 9 siblings, 7 of whom were killed by the age of 15 due to the brutal training imposed by their father. Only Tengen and his younger brother survived. His father had treated his wives as mere tools for producing heirs, a path Tengen refused to follow. When he and his wives first met Kagaya Ubuyashiki, the master acknowledged the difficult path they had chosen, recognizing how the shinobi had rejected their old ways to become demon slayers. Despite all the hardships, Kagaya thanked Tengen, calling him a remarkable child. With these memories in mind, Tengen declares his loyalty to Kagaya, promising to lay down his life for him. As Gyutaro watches Tengen breathing heavily, he mocks him for pretending to be strong when the poison is clearly affecting him. Tengen dismisses the demon's taunts, driving his cleaver into the ground, invigorated by the thought of battle. He launches an attack, twirling his weapon towards Gyutaro, forcing the demon and Daki to retreat. With a swift move, he kicks Daki into the air and slashes at Gyutaro. As the siblings attempt to converge on Tengen, he hurls bombs around them. Gyutaro manages to dodge the explosions, but Daki is blown away and decapitated by the blast. Realizing the bombs explode with the slightest friction, Gyutaro grows more cautious. Tengen, using his agility, slashes Gyutaro's throat while extending the range of his blade. Daki, furious at being beheaded again, curses her own misfortune. Despite the mounting injuries, Gyutaro remains confident that Tengen will succumb to the poison eventually. At that moment, Inosuke and Zenitsu arrive to assist him. Daki and Gyutaro, taken aback by their sudden appearance, are then joined by Tanjiro. The evacuation of Yoshiwara continues under the leadership of Makio and Suma, while Hinatsuru, recovering from her injuries, slowly makes her way out of Kirimise. Tengen praises the trio for their flashy entrances, while Gyutaro mocks them, claiming that they will die like all the others. Daki asserts that they cannot win, as the poison is already weakening the Hashira. However, Tengen defiantly declares that they will succeed, and warns them not to underestimate humans. He refers to the three demon slayers as his brilliant Tsuguko, and reveals that the only way to kill the siblings is to decapitate them both simultaneously. Tanjiro, amazed by Tengen's determination, is reminded of Kyojuro. Gyutaro mocks their strategy, pointing out that no Hashira has ever succeeded in beheading both siblings. He proudly boasts that he has devoured 15 Hashira, while Daki has devoured 7. Without warning, Daki attacks Tengen, but Zenitsu intercepts her with a powerful strike, launching both of them into the sky. As Tanjiro calls out to him, Inosuke instructs him to ignore Zenitsu, saying that they will handle Daki, while Tengen and Tanjiro focus on Gyutaro. On the rooftops, Zenitsu confronts Daki, demanding that she apologize to the young girls she had hurt earlier. Daki dismisses his words, coldly claiming that women in the city are nothing more than merchandise to be bought, sold, and destroyed. Zenitsu refuses to accept her twisted worldview, insisting that she stop projecting her pain onto others. In response, Daki begins speaking in unison with Gyutaro, revealing the depth of their connection. Together, they justify their cruelty by claiming that they can only cope with their own misfortune by taking from the fortunate. As the battle intensifies, Tanjiro realizes that Gyutaro is the true threat, emanating an overwhelming demonic aura. He resolves to protect Tengen and prepares to react the moment Gyutaro moves. However, Gyutaro suddenly rushes forward, forcing Tengen to push Tanjiro aside to engage him in combat. Tanjiro, frustrated with his own slowness, tries to refocus as Tengen and Gyutaro exchange blows. Daki's obi lashes into the battlefield, forcing Tengen and Tanjiro to defend against both siblings simultaneously. Despite their best efforts, the sheer number of attacks overwhelms the demon slayers, turning the battle into a chaotic struggle. With every move, Tengen is forced to dodge Gyutaro's sickle attacks while parrying Daki's obi. Amid the chaos, Hinatsuru arrives on the scene, firing a barrage of kunai tipped with wisteria poison. Though Gyutaro blocks most of the kunai, some pierce his body. Realizing his wounds aren't healing, Gyutaro begins to falter. Seeing an opening, Tanjiro lunges at the demon, his sword aiming for Gyutaro's neck as the upper-ranked demon acknowledges his determination with a twisted sense of admiration. Gyutaro deflects the wave of kunai with ease, watching as Tengen swiftly ducks under his swing and slices through both of his legs. A stray knife, laced with wisteria poison, strikes Gyutaro, rendering him unable to heal. Seizing the moment, Tanjiro and Tengen charge forward, their blades aimed at Gyutaro's neck, while Hinatsuru observes from above. In a quiet moment of reflection, Tengen and his wives once visited his family grave. There, they prayed for the departed, with Tengen lamenting that he could never drink with them. Pouring sake over the headstone, he vowed that one day they would all drink together. Afterward, the four of them sat down for lunch. As they ate, Hinetsuru asked Tengen if he still thought about his siblings. He replied that not a single day passed without them crossing his mind, and it felt as though it was only yesterday that he left his home with his wives. Suma, Hinetsuru, and Makio exchanged glances, taken aback by his sentiment. Tengen, noticing their silence, urged them to eat as well. Suma enthusiastically praised the food, drawing Makio's scolding, despite Tengen's earlier reminder to enjoy the meal. Amid the chatter, Tengen casually muttered that he would likely end up in hell someday, shocking his wives. He quickly retracted his words, telling them there was no need to scold him. As he gazed at the headstone, he declared his intent to live the flashiest life possible in honor of his siblings, with his wives by his side. A gust of wind swept through the trees, sending sakura petals floating through the air. Tengen gently plucked one from Hinetsuru's hair, making her blush. When Makio asked for the same treatment, he denied her, teasing that she had placed the petals on herself, much to her dismay. Hinetsuru, grateful for his gesture, carefully took the petal from him, thanking him warmly. Seeing this, Suma and Makio demanded their own petals from Tengen, but he brushed them off, leaving them to groan in frustration, while Hinetsuru chuckled quietly. Back in the heat of battle, Hinetsuru watches as Tanjiro and Tengen close in on Gyutaro. He pulls the kunai from his neck and regenerates his legs, leaving Tengen alarmed. The wisteria poison has been neutralized. Gyutaro mocks them, blood seeping from his arms as he unleashes his blood demon art. Rotating circular slashes, flying blood sickles. Tanjiro narrowly dodges the spinning blades, tearing his sleeve, while Tengen counters with sound breathing, fourth form. Constant resounding slashes, dispersing the blood sickles with his spinning swords. Gyutaro vanishes from sight, and Tengen suddenly hears Hinetsuru calling out. Daki's obi rapidly approaches him, but before it can ensnare him, Hinetsuru hurls a kunai, blocking the sash. She shouts to Tengen, telling him she will lure the demons away. Just then, Gyutaro appears behind her, silencing her with a hand over her mouth. Tengen, desperate to reach her, is blocked by Daki's obi, which encircles him. As he watches his wife in danger, a memory resurfaces. He and his wives, standing in a field at sunset. Suma, fascinated by the dragonflies, had remarked that she wished she could become one. Tengen called it a flashy dream, but before he could say more, Makio interrupted, scolding Suma for her silly wish. Amid their playful bickering, Tengen and Hinetsuru had exchanged amused smiles. Hinetsuru's voice echoed in his mind as she once gently asked him about living as ordinary people if they ever defeated an upper rank. She had noted the burdens they carried as shinobi, their past sins weighing on them, and feared that even if they survived, they might not live long enough to make amends. Remembering her words, Tengen roars in fury, tearing the obi apart and demanding Gyutaro leave her alone. His shout startles Tanjiro, who looks up to see Hinetsuru trapped in Gyutaro's grasp. Tanjiro, determined not to lose another innocent life, forces himself to his feet despite his wounds, telling himself that he must stop being the one who always needs saving. Noticing Gyutaro's focus on Tengen, he realizes that a surprise attack might be their only chance to save her. Pushing through the pain, Tanjiro combines water breathing with Hinokami Kagura, moving with incredible speed. In a flash, he slices off Gyutaro's hand, freeing Hinetsuru. Gyutaro, stunned by the sudden move, sizes up the exhausted Tanjiro and concludes that he won't be able to pull off such a technique again. Tanjiro, however, is encouraged by his success in blending the two styles. He recalls Sekonji Urokodaki's teachings about adapting techniques to suit one's strengths. Although he may never master water breathing like Gyu Tomioka, he vows not to let those lessons go to waste. But as Gyutaro lunges at him, Tengen appears at the last moment, thanking Tanjiro as he strikes at Gyutaro's neck. Meanwhile, Inosuke and Zenitsu battle Daki's countless obi. Inosuke, frustrated by their slippery nature, curses his inability to cut through them. Launched into the air by Daki, He panics as he sees Tengen about to strike Gyutaro. Zenitsu warns him of an incoming OB, which he barely manages to avoid. Realizing that they need to behead Daki to stand a chance, Inosuke charges at her, wildly batting away the OBs. Zenitsu urges him to calm down, pointing out that Tengen and Tanjiro are about to decapitate Gyutaro, and they must synchronize their attacks. Inosuke reluctantly agrees, while Zenitsu's sudden seriousness catches him off guard. Together they push forward, deflecting the obis as Inosuke, leading the charge, uses beast breathing, 8th form, explosive rush, speeding towards Daki. Tanjiro and Zenitsu flank him, slashing through the obis in his path with their respective forms of water and thunder breathing. Inosuke reaches Daki, ignoring the cuts he sustains, and saws through her neck with his chipped blades, finally decapitating her. As Daki's head falls, Inosuke grabs it and bolts away to prevent her from reattaching it. Tanjiro and Zenitsu cover him, but in a sudden twist, Gyutaro appears and stabs Inosuke through the chest, retrieving his sister's head. Tanjiro, horrified, watches helplessly as Inosuke collapses, both poisoned and gravely wounded. As Gyutaro gloats, Tanjiro frantically searches for Tengen, only to find him unconscious, his left hand severed. Before he can react, Zenitsu shouts a warning as Daki's obi cuts through the air. Zenitsu pushes Tanjiro to safety, but Tanjiro, overwhelmed with guilt, laments that his lack of focus has led to both Inosuke and Tengen being mortally wounded. Upon seeing Tengen's unconscious body and severed left hand, Tanjiro is frozen with shock and disbelief. Zenitsu shouts a warning of an incoming attack, pushing him off the roof just as the obi tears apart their surroundings. Apologizing for his lack of focus, Tanjiro blames himself for everyone's injuries, including Nezuko's. He crashes to the ground, groaning another apology as he drifts into unconsciousness. In his dazed state, he imagines himself back in his home's forest, standing before Nezuko as she appeared before her transformation. She begs him to stop apologizing, questioning why he always does so. Reminding him of their father's death from illness, she assures him it wasn't his fault, and that as humans they cannot expect everything to go their way. What matters, she insists, is the present. As she shifts back into her demon form, Nezuko urges him to fight harder, tearfully asking him to stop blaming himself and to understand her feelings. Tanjiro wakes, surrounded by the burning ruins of Yoshiwara district. His first thought is for the safety of the people living there, but then he turns to check on Nezuko, relieved to see her still asleep. As he resolves to do whatever he can, Gyutaro appears, surprised that Tanjiro is still alive. Mocking him, the upper rank 6 attributes Tanjiro's survival to luck and nothing more, as Daki watches contently from the rooftops. Gyutaro cruelly describes the fates of Tanjiro's friends. Inosuke lies in a pool of his own blood, Zenitsu is trapped under debris, and Tengen, weakened by poison, is near death. He sneers at their disgrace, emphasizing Tanjiro's shame for carrying a demon on his back. "Who is she?" Gyutaro asks with contempt. Terrified and too weak to fight, Tanjiro hesitantly answers that Nezuko is his sister. Gyutaro laughs at his inability to protect her, mockingly patting Tanjiro's head before breaking 2 of his fingers with a sadistic grin. As Tanjiro reels from the pain, Gyutaro berates him for being a disgrace and forces him to listen, taunting him for surviving while others perished. Releasing his grip, Gyutaro watches in amusement as Tanjiro flees with Nezuko's box. Dumbfounded, Gyutaro and Daki watch Tanjiro run, with the demon quickly chasing him down. He kicks Tanjiro into a burning house, only for Tanjiro to narrowly escape the collapsing rubble. Desperately, Tanjiro hurls sachets and debris at Gyutaro, but the demon merely laughs before kicking him in the stomach, causing him to cough up blood. Gyutaro admits a twisted fondness for Tanjiro's pathetic state, touching his scar and musing over its odd appearance. Suddenly inspired, Gyutaro proposes that Tanjiro become a demon too, offering to spare his life if he agrees, and threatening Nezuko if he doesn't. Overhearing this, Daki objects to the idea. Tanjiro, eyes fixed on the sky, claims to have been waiting for this moment. He headbutts Gyutaro, who mocks the weak attack but is stunned when he realizes he can't move. Tanjiro had stabbed him with a wisteria-laced kunai during the headbutt, masking the scent with sachets scattered earlier. As Tanjiro prepares to strike, Gyutaro curses him for persisting, despite his weakness. His blade ignites with the fire of Hinokami Kagura, and Tanjiro brings it down towards Gyutaro's neck. Hearing what he believes to be Nezuko calling out to him, Tanjiro is startled to realize it's Daki, crying for her brother. He imagines himself in Gyutaro's place, wondering what would have happened if he too had become a demon. In that scenario, Tanjiro believes someone from the Demon Slayer Corps would have the mercy to kill him. As Gyutaro struggles to pull the kunai out, Tanjiro's blade begins cutting into his neck. Daki, sensing her brother's danger, sends her obi to kill Tanjiro, but Zenitsu suddenly appears, cutting the obi and saving him. Furious, Daki sends more obi after Zenitsu, who dodges and counters with thunder breathing. First form, thunderclap and flash, Godspeed. With blinding speed, Zenitsu reaches Daki and catches her neck with his blade, cutting through the obi embedded there. Meanwhile, Gyutaro rips out the kunai and fully recovers, launching a vicious attack on Tanjiro. They race across the district, the demon's speed increasing as his poison spreads through Tanjiro's body. Just as Gyutaro is about to stab Tanjiro in the eye, Tengen reappears, blocking the attack with an explosive swing of his blades. Shocked to see Tengen alive, Gyutaro realizes that the Hashira had stopped his heart to slow the poison. Tengen, fighting with one hand, declares that he can now use his musical score technique, reassuring Tanjiro that they will win. Gyutaro retaliates with a wave of blood blades, but Tengen, using his enhanced hearing, reads the attack like a song and skillfully deflects it with sound breathing. As their fierce battle rages on, Tanjiro catches up, ready to decapitate Gyutaro. In a brutal exchange, Tengen's left eye is slashed, and he is stabbed in the stomach. Tanjiro leaps to finish Gyutaro, but the demon stabs him in the jaw, taunting him for being weak despite Tengen's help. However, Tanjiro, his strength renewed by the fiery mark on his forehead, forces his blade deeper into Gyutaro's neck. Elsewhere, Zenitsu, still holding Daki, realizes his strength is fading. Just as she attempts to kill him with her obi, Inosuke appears, slashing through the attack. Though grievously injured, Inosuke claims he shifted his organs to avoid the poison and delivers the final blow, decapitating Daki. With a synchronized effort, Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke successfully behead both demons. Their heads fall to the ground, rolling until they come to rest before each other. From the rooftops, Suma, Makio, and Hinatsuru watch, amazed yet uncertain if the battle is truly over. In the aftermath of the battle, Tengen struggles to breathe as the poison seeps through him, sapping his strength. His eyes lock onto Gyutaro's body, now primed to unleash blood blades, and he shouts a warning to Tanjiro. However, the poison has also debilitated Tanjiro, leaving him unable to respond. Tengen's urgent cry to flee is swallowed by the eruption of massive blood waves that devastate the district. Amidst the chaos, Nezuko's box is hurled into the air. She emerges and harnesses her blood demon art to incinerate the blood blades, saving everyone from further disaster. Tanjiro regains consciousness to find Nezuko by his side. As he surveys the destruction, Yoshiwara district reduced to charred rubble, he realizes Nezuko has saved him from the poison. Trying to stand, he collapses immediately, but Zenitsu's voice cuts through the fog of his despair. Nezuko carries Tanjiro on her back to seek help. Zenitsu, now awake and frantic over his injuries, anxiously asks Tanjiro if his legs are broken. Tanjiro reassures him that he is relatively fine. Zenitsu then reveals that Inosuke's heartbeat is growing faint. Seeing Inosuke unconscious, Tanjiro determines that the poison must be neutralized. He briefly entertains the idea of using sunlight for a cure, only to dismiss it as the moonlight renders it ineffective. Contemplating sending a Kasugai crow to alert Shinobu, he quickly abandons the thought, feeling the weight of his friend's possible death. Tears well up as he laments their tragic fate. Suddenly, Nezuko touches Inosuke's chest, enveloping him in her fiery blood demon art. Tanjiro watches in astonishment as the poison burns away. Inosuke stirs, asking for food, and Tanjiro, overwhelmed with relief, hugs him tightly, much to Inosuke's confusion. Elsewhere, Suma weeps over Tengen's deteriorating condition, unable to halt the poison despite their antidote. Makio and Hinatsuru sit beside him, devastated as they watch their husband's life slip away. Tengen tries to speak his final words, but Suma's anguished cries drown him out. Makio scolds her sharply, and Hinatsuru demands silence. Annoyed, Tengen doubts he will ever get to say his final words, but Nezuko arrives and touches his arm, enveloping him in her blood demon art's flames. His wives are horrified, with Suma angrily accusing Nezuko of cremating him prematurely. Healed, Tengen rises, relieved to feel the poison gone, and his wives embrace him with overwhelming relief. As they cry, Tengen apologizes for causing them worry. Tanjiro explains that Nezuko's blood demon art removed the poison, but urges him to remain still. Tengen comments on Tanjiro's need to rest as well, but insists on searching for the demons' heads. Carried by Nezuko through the ruined district, Tanjiro spots a pool of Gyutaro's blood and cautiously investigates. After tossing a pebble to test its activity, he collects a sample. Tamayo's cat appears from the rubble, takes the sample, and disappears. The scent of blood intensifies as Tanjiro hears the upper-rank siblings bickering. Gyutaro chastises Daki for dying at the hands of bottom feeders, while Daki berates Gyutaro for failing to kill Tengen. Gyutaro responds that he intended to kill Tanjiro first and suggests Daki could have slain Tengen. Daki retorts that Gyutaro should have controlled her better and accuses him of allowing her to fail. Gyutaro, enraged, insults Daki for her failures, while Daki accuses him of being the true fool, declaring that no one as ugly as him could be her brother. The siblings' argument grows heated as Tanjiro watches their disintegration. Daki weeps and begs Gyutaro to resolve their situation before vanishing. Gyutaro, calling her by her human name, Ume, curses both her demon name and their tragic past. He reminisces about their harsh upbringing in the entertainment district, his struggle for survival, and his pride in Ume's beauty. Gyutaro reflects on their fall from grace and Ume's tragic death, the memory of Ume's final moments, their failed rescue, and Gyutaro's rage against the world are vividly replayed in his mind. The upper-rank demon, now in a foggy void he believes to be hell, is joined by Ume, who has reverted to her pre-burning appearance. Gyutaro, irritated, walks away from her, prompting Ume to plead for forgiveness and express her sorrow for their defeat. Despite her pleas, Gyutaro insists they are no longer siblings, urging her to go towards the light while he follows his own path. Ume, tearfully clinging to her brother, insists she will always be his little sister, no matter how many times she is reborn. She recalls a promise Gyutaro made during their childhood and urges him to remember their bond. As they embrace, Gyutaro, in his human form, and Ume descend into the fires of hell together. Tanjiro and Nezuko watch the final remnants of Gyutaro's head disintegrate, pondering the siblings' final reconciliation. In Yoshiwara, Obanai Iguro praises Tengen for his victory over the upper six, but emphasizes that the weakest upper rank was defeated. Tengen humbly denies the praise, while Suma reproaches him for his tardiness. Obanai questions Tengen's future now that he has lost his left eye and hand, wondering if he will recover and continue his duties. Tengen announces his decision to retire from being a Hashira, believing Kagaya will understand. Obanai rejects Tengen's decision, arguing that many young demon slayers are dying before reaching their potential and claiming that even someone as uninspiring as you is better than nothing. He urges Tengen to fight until his last breath. Tengen, unfazed, retorts that the young guy you hate is fulfilling his potential, leaving Obanai stunned by Tanjiro's survival. As a Kasugai crow announces the defeat of an upper rank by Tengen, Tanjiro, Nezuko, Zenitsu, and Inosuke, Kagaya Ubuyashiki is overjoyed. However, his worsening condition causes him to cough blood, alarming his wife, Amani. Despite his deteriorating state, Kagaya views the defeat of an upper rank, something that hadn't happened in a century, as a significant omen. He vows to defeat Muzan Kibutsuji in this generation, cursing him as the sole blemish in his family's legacy. His coughing worsens, prompting his children to rush to his side. Meanwhile, Akaza, in the Infinity Castle, realizes he has been summoned because an upper-rank demon has been killed. Supported by his wives, Tengen leaves Yoshiwara, feeling the residual pain but grateful for their survival. Suma, Makio, and Hinatsuru express their relief that they are returning together. Tanjiro, hugging Zenitsu, Inosuke, and Nezuko, cries tears of relief over their survival. Zenitsu voices his relief at the battle's end, and Tanjiro expresses his gratitude that his friends emerged alive,